folks, welcome back. Today I'm finally, after much time, doing part 3 of the 2021 Cabin Fever Challenge series, which I had titled Embrace the Suck. I've been meaning to get this filmed for quite a while, but I just haven't had the time, and I've been distracted by other things. So, with no further ado, I figure since CFC2022 is now starting, and I happen to be the match official for Division 6, I may as well show you a couple things, especially if you're someone who is joining the competition as a new member, things that you may not be aware of if you don't often shoot in wintry conditions, things that I've learned over the years, and things that were quite obvious in the video that I made last time. I tried to complete the challenge by doing as little preparation as possible to see how well I could do under the worst possible circumstances. So to start off, the first entry that I put in was for the Unlimited Division, which was Division 2. And for that I used my Ruger Mini 14, which was a very early 580 series. This is before they put in the tapered barrel, but after they made all the upgrades to the gas blocks and everything. Which this year doesn't look the same as it did earlier on. I had a little fun with this thing over the past year, doing some upgrades and making some adjustments, because I wanted to give it just a little more oomph and a little bit more, well, I wanted to make it more practical, because I don't shoot this one a whole lot. So I guess before I get started, okay, for all those of you out there, this is empty. It has been checked, and it's all good. Okay, I'm going to start off with this one. We'll go tip to butt. So I haven't done anything different with the muzzle or anything like that, but since last year I did do something as an upgrade. This is an adjustable gas block that I purchased from Accuracy Systems, which is a barrel strut to help act as a harmonic dampener, and my main reason for getting this was I wanted the adjustable gas block. Reason being is Mini 14s, at least of this particular vintage, to me they seem like they are horribly overgassed. This thing recoils way more than I think it should when it was still in stock configuration. Part of that is due to the fact that I'm shooting 5.56 through it most of the time. 223 does shoot very soft out of these, but the added pressure, I didn't want to beat this thing up. So I got an adjustable gas block, and I installed that, and we'll see how it goes. I haven't quite tested it yet. I'll do a little review on that once we've got more time. I have put on a 1913 pick rail and used that for my bipod. Okay, this was on it in the last video, but I wanted to show that quickly. This is a no-name bipod. I think I must have got this bipod probably 15 years ago from Cheaper Than Dirt. Has no brand name that I can remember, but it does work really well, and I usually like to push my bipods forward when I fold them. And what's also nice is if I do for some reason decide to grab this from the front, it gives me just a little bit of extra purchase here so that I'm not up on top of the hottest part of the gun, right? So I've got that, and that still leaves me room to bring myself back a little bit the way I like to when I'm target shooting. So that's one of the reasons I've done that. Other upgrades, I haven't done too much. I haven't talked about this one on the channel yet. I had purchased a Monstrum sight and unfortunately realized I cannot mount that on this Mini 14 because of the way that scopes are set. I tried using one of the aftermarket pick rail units that you can put on these, even to drill and tap one, and it just wasn't working. It didn't have enough eye relief. So I picked this one up from Monstrum instead. This is a 1:4 by 24, which so far I'm very impressed with, though I'm disappointed about one thing about it. Stay tuned for that on another video. Other than that, I haven't done a whole lot other than just a little minor trigger job, nothing crazy, just, you know, polished it up a little bit. I didn't lighten the trigger at all. I like the trigger as is. I'm particularly fond of two-stage triggers. Other than that, this is as it came from the factory. I haven't done a whole lot to it, apart from paint job. And at some point, I'll do a little tutorial on how I do camo. Right now, this is my winter camo type thing. We'll see where I go with it when spring rolls around, if I want to change up the camo or if this is going to just continue to be my winter rifle. So, that being said, looking at the run when I did this, from what I can see, the big issue that I had was my ammunition. That affected both of my runs during the challenge last year. I was using the 62 grain military spec 5.56 loads out of this rifle. And unfortunately, my sights, I had not adjusted, at least not adjusted enough, from the standard 55 grain 223 loads. Okay. Now, people say that there's no difference between 223 and 5.56, but there is a difference. Luckily, this rifle in particular is capable of shooting both, but point of impact does shift, particularly because of the extra gassing from the 5.56. So where my holds and everything would have been probably great if I was shooting regular 55 grain 223s, the 62 grain 5.56s, that's the, I think it's the M885 ball or 855 ball, whatever it is, that stuff moves a lot faster and it's a lot heavier. So at 100 yards, my point of impact shifted by almost half a foot. So make sure you've got your rifle dialed in. Other than that, the run seemed to go pretty smooth. The toughest part that I was having issues with was I had to aim low and left in order to make hits, and even then I still didn't do that enough. So from what I could tell, my manipulation of this particular rifle, I think, was pretty good. I didn't have any issues with fumbling, anything like that, especially considering the fact that I was reloading just from mags that I'd stuffed in my jacket pocket. I wasn't going from a mag pouch or anything like that, so I didn't know what orientation I was getting stuff when I took it out of the pocket, but still didn't have an issue, so I was lucky there. As far as other things that you'll see, you don't see it so much on the Mini 14 run as on the one with my number 4, but in wintertime it is very tough to shoot. It's very stressful. Reason being, snow makes your ground unstable. I don't care how well you shovel it or clear it or anything like that, snow is not a stable surface to be shooting off of. Especially when it was the type of snow I was on, where you have, maybe a ½ inch of crust on top and then it's still soft underneath. Basically means that no matter where you are, it can give way underneath you at any time, which makes for very unpredictable stability. So you'll notice that a little bit as I was shooting. Other than that, I didn't see any issues really with this particular run, so I was quite pleased. I scored, I think, pretty well for a new entrant. This was my first year that I was completing any sort of real shooting competition, and it was a whole lot of fun. So that takes care of the Mini 14. Let me break out one of my Lees here. Okay, so this isn't the one that I shot in the competition. The one I shot in the competition was an unissued number 4 Mark I Lee Enfield, the original 303, and it was a 2-groove rifle. I don't break that one out very much because I like to, that one is unissued and all matching, and I preferred not to, cause it any undue wear, but I like to shoot it once in a while because that's what they're made to do. When I'm just going out to have fun with a 303, I bring out Franken rifle, which you guys have seen on the channel here before. So, as far as the Lee Enfield run that I did last year, you'll notice a couple things, particularly the fact I stumbled a couple times because of that snow issue. I had major issues because of the ammunition I was using. I mentioned that on the channel, and that ruined my run, I think, more than anything, just from the fact that I was using ammunition that the rifle did not like. If I run, Federal Power Shock or anything like that through it, the rifle absolutely performs to perfection. For some reason, it just does not like PPU brass, and that's in both of these, which I have checked head spacing and everything is correct. There's no issues. So, the way I shoot, there are things you may notice that aren't particularly typical in competition shooting. One of them being the way that I stand. If I'm not moving around, I don't take the same sort of stance that many people do. I try and find the best way possible to spend as little of my muscle energy holding up the rifle versus holding it steady. I try and focus all of my muscle on holding the rifle steady. So I use basically the geometry of my body and bones in order to do that. So what you'll have noticed is I took a grip that was pretty far back, okay? And I don't know if you can see my feet so much, but actually before I continue, make sure you can all see, right? This is empty and on safe, so I've got dead trigger here. So I typically tuck my elbow right into my rib cage here, okay? And I stand, it's more of an older style, I would say. It's more reminiscent of, early 1900s target shooting. Almost like I'm shooting a musket. And I like doing this, particularly on the Lees, because the magazine and the way all this fits, seriously, you can't beat the ergonomics of this rifle. But what it does is, by having my elbow there, all of my energy goes right into my skeletal structure and straight down my leg into my foot to create a perfect stance where all of the weight is held up just by my body geometry. Right? And then I can focus on gripping with my hands to keep everything steady. And what it also does is it reduces fatigue. If I was to come right out here into more of an isosceles stance, then I find I'm not as steady. It's just how I have found things to be. So that's one thing. Other things you may not think of when you're doing something like the Cabin Fever Challenge and you're out in the snow is bolt manipulation. Right? A common mistake of rookie shooters is to, after they've taken their shot, right? After they've taken their shot, they drop their rifle to cycle the action. That is not economical in ways of motion, and it also means that you now have to reacquire your target. Okay? If you really want to get a good time on any sort of competition, okay, I would be bringing my rifle right up, and I can just go right ahead like that. Right? I don't have to do anything crazy. I can just, obviously this is helping me a little bit because of the follower right now, and I don't like to dry fire. So by doing that, I can come right up, I never have to break off the target, and I can just go right in for the next one. Unfortunately, you don't see a lot of that on the 2021 footage because I was dealing with such sticky ammunition. If you are not firing ammunition that likes to feed correctly in your firearm, the bolt manipulation will be tough. So that was one of the main reasons why, particularly towards the end of the run, you'll see me dropping the rifle from my shoulder to cycle the action because I could not get enough leverage to open it and extract without dropping it from my shoulder. I just didn't have the oomph to get that bolt open. And that was entirely due to the ammunition. I've never been on a slicker action than a Lee Enfield. So that's one thing you'll notice. The other issue I was having, particularly once I went prone, was manipulating the bolt. I had gotten snow on my hands from dropping down, and that got the bolt wet. So you'll see once or twice my hand slips off of the bolt. If there's ever been an argument to have a knurled bolt handle, there it is. Other than that, I feel like I did pretty well with the Lee. I ran into issues. If you're someone who wears glasses, Glasses fog up, especially when you've got inclement weather. Those of you who have them know it. And that did not spare me this time either. I had to use the 300-yard battle sight, which is a larger aperture, because of the fact that I couldn't see through the vernier aperture, which is much smaller, which I would normally use for target shooting. I just couldn't see through it. My glasses were too fogged up, so I couldn't get a good read on the target. So I'm looking at ways to try and avoid that, but so far the only one I've been able to find is LASIK, and I'm not about to start doing that quite yet. Okay. So, what did I learn? Well, I learned a couple things. I learned that I have, from what I can tell, I'm practiced very well as far as manipulating my firearms and their actions, whereas I'm not quite so good and need a little bit of time practicing at these ranges. I'm not used to shooting at 100 meters. Typically I'm used to shooting at 50 to 75 and then 300 plus. So like the 100 to 250-ish meter distance is something I'm not well practiced in. So I've learned that I have to practice more at those distances to learn the trajectory and the flight path of my rounds. So that's one thing I'm looking at. I'm also, I know for next time I need to clear myself a little space to shoot from so that I have a stable shooting position. That made things pretty tough. But otherwise, it was a great deal of fun. People look, you look at something like this and you go, oh, that's easy as pie, 20 shots, 100 yards, I can do that. And believe me, you think you can, there's a good chance you'll have trouble with it. I was particularly proud of the fact that I scored as well as I did, particularly with the Mini. Knowing that I had to hold off for windage and elevation with little to no reference point, just a blinding white space at the range. I was quite happy with my score. I was happy with the gap between myself and the scores that followed mine. I felt like I was closer to being at the same score as the person who scored higher than me than the one who scored lower than me. So that told me that in some ways I must have done some things right. It's not a matter of being better than someone else or anything like that, or worse than someone else. It's a matter of being better than yourself. So my goal this year, as we go into this challenge, is going to be to outdo my scores from last year. I haven't quite decided which rifles I'll be using this year. I have a couple ideas. I will most likely be trying out Franken rifle, so we'll see how that goes. This one I know I hit well with. I'm going to probably use the Mini 14 for the Unlimited Division because it's the only semi-auto that I own, at least that's a long gun. Basically I have to decide on what I'm using for manual repeating. It's either going to be this or my Rossi 92, which I haven't really shown on the channel yet. That one's a lot of fun and I hit well with it, but I'm trying to decide which one I think I'd rather use. I am the division official for Division 6, which is the new one for this year, the 22 Rimfire Division. We're really looking forward to this. Hopefully, I think we're going to see a lot of Ruger 1022s and similar semi-autos. I don't think I will be scoring very high on it. I'm going to be using something that's a bit of an antique. I have an early Marlin, it's a Model 80 DL, in original condition, completely original, no modifications, no nothing. Original micro groove barrel, I believe it's 1953 dated, which is awesome because it's a firearm that a lot of people learned how to shoot on. It was my first, and from the 40s up through the 70s, it was most people's first. They were also marketed as this, it was basically the Sears 22 as well. So I'm going to be excited to take that one out. I've been doing some work on it. It had a broken firing pins. So we'll see how I can do with that. So we're really excited for that new division. Great way to get kids involved. Great way if you're not looking to spend a fortune, maybe you don't have as much ammunition as some of us to, you know, expend on the competition, then it's a good way to still get involved without having to spend all the money. And frankly, I find 22s are a little tougher to shoot than some other firearms, just from the fact that they're also lightweight, they're hard to steady. So best of luck. I look forward to seeing people's submissions for Cabin Fever Challenge of 2022. The deadline for that, I believe, is in March. So I'm looking forward to seeing some video submissions. Make sure you enter some divisions. Look for them on Facebook. There's also the Rifle Chair website you can also find information on. And you can print out the match targets for it. Very simple. So thanks for tuning in. Enjoy.